Hey y'all, this is Miss Becky with Art School. Yes, Bryson, I know school is misspelled, but it's kind of a play on words. It's cool to learn about art, and school is where we learn, so it's Art School. All right, so today we're going to work on a project that shows a lot of movement, and we're going to try and establish some movement in our work. We're going to work with a piece of copy paper that came just right out of the copier. Make sure that you ask your parents before you go rating the copier and using all the paper, because people are working at home and some people need that paper to complete their work. All right, so make sure you're asking before you do so. All right, so what I did is I folded my paper hot dog style the long way, and I used that paper. I just cut that paper right in half because I need a long strip of paper today to work my project. And because I'm working on a little clipboard, I'm going to set a little piece of tape underneath my paper to make sure it's going to stay put for me. Well, I've got a bow in it. There we go. All right. So first thing I need is a black magic marker. I prefer to work with a permanent black magic marker because when you start putting colors on, if it's not permanent, sometimes it can bleed. All right. And so I like to use a Sharpie. You guys know we like to use Sharpies. And I'm going to draw some big bowl shapes, just circles, squares, rectangles, triangles, and some closed in lines on my page. So I want to try and fill the entire page. So I might start with a large circle that comes right off the side of the page here. So it looks like it's already part way off the page. It's okay to create some overlapping things and some things that look like they go in other positions. All right, so I'm going to think about maybe a triangle next door, so I can do a shape like this one if I want to, a nice triangle shape. All right, and if I want to, I could bring this line back down and just let it butt into this, or be cut off a little shorter so that it would actually appear as if it's right behind. Okay, so let me show you that. If I made another circle right here, I could make just a partial circle, right? And where it butts into the line there, it actually looks as if it's kind of tucked behind that shape. So I'm going to continue to fill up my space. I might decide that I want to use a zigzag line here at the edge of my paper. All right. And any place that I do that, I just want to make sure I come down and touch the edge of the paper. And I could leave my shape just like that if I wanted to, or I could come in and add a second triangle shape there. And I'm working from an angle myself, so it's kind of hard for me to see exactly how I'm doing this, but that's okay. So now it begins to look like a piece of rick-rack, a piece of ribbon that's been turned each way, because I've given it a line on the top and the bottom, even though it comes off the edge of the page. All right, I want to go ahead and fill the rest of my space up. So I might think about, okay, maybe there's a triangle on this end that comes off behind this circle, or maybe there's a shape like a heart, or even a rounded kind of ovally shape. Maybe I'll have a circle right here, a smaller one, because different sizes creates a lot of variety in your page, and that's really good. I could have some overlapping circles here, starting with a small one, and then a slightly bigger one, and then an even bigger one that might even collide with that. So I'm going to come over and put a little tail right there. So it looks like they're kind of one right behind the other. I could create a square shape in here if I wanted to, or another triangle. I just want to really make sure that I've filled up my space. So I always look to see where my white spaces are, so that I know where to come back in and draw maybe a little more. Now what you want to avoid, that means don't do this, okay, is don't draw too small. Don't draw little bitty things, draw big bold shapes. So even starting with a bigger shape like this, you can always come back and add a second shape if you'd like to. Kind of looks like a donut now. We might need to make some sprinkles. All right, so we're going to just fill up our page like that. So this is your first job, is to create the black line, okay, and do your design on there. If you feel more comfortable kind of drawing things out with a pencil, That's okay. Or if you make a mistake, you can always bring in that other sheet of paper from the other half of your page and try again. All right, so there's nothing wrong with that either. Okay, so now once we have our space kind of filled in, and I know that I'm going to have a white space down here where my clip is holding my page, but for your sake, I'm just going to leave it like it is. Now we can come back in and begin to color. Now I'm going to use my Crayola markers, okay? And I like Crayola because remember they got that nice tip on them that'll make a nice broad line, or if you draw with them sitting straight up on your page, it'll make a nice thin line. I like the variety of lines. You guys who've had me, you know that. All right. And I also like to color in using my marker, but I don't color like you do with crayons going like that. I like to fill in my space the way a professional graphic artist would do. All right, so I take my marker and turn it over on its flat edge, and I basically draw from one side to the other, let it kind of bump in, and put the next overlapping line on top of that. And this is the way I like to color in, because if you leave a space right there, you can come back and catch it. All right, because it's really nice and neat to do it this way instead of the scribble method where you have dark areas and lighter areas. And yeah, when this dries, it does look a little striped somewhat, like, you know, it's visible that you have done it in nice lines. So when I have students that tell me, oh, she can't tell whether I scribbled it in or if I did it the other way, yeah, you can tell. It's a difference in your professionalism and how you do things, right? Okay, so I'm going to fill in my shapes with lots and lots of color. So that's what I want you to do next. All right, so now I've kind of striped this in. I'm just going to make a nice stripe down the edge. So I cover up those little white spaces there. Whoop, I kind of wiggled and wagged right there. That's all right. All right. All right, so now my shape is nice and filled in, and it looks nice and neat as well. Now, if you have crayons instead of markers, that's okay. If you have colored pencils, you'd rather use your colored pencils, then that's okay as well. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You do know that I often use lines to fill in spaces, and I've often encouraged my students to do that. So I'm going to do some of these just line shapes in some of these areas so that it gives some color, but it has the variety of some lines. So I'm going to put my marker on its point, and I'm going to do those little swirly lines. Y'all remember those little swirly lines? It's a pin point, a pinwheel. All right, so we're just going to put the marker down and get a little bigger and bigger as we wiggle. And if you put those in close together or let them overlap a little bit, it begins to fill in that space, so there's not much white left over. And it gives a nice variety to your work because it makes it look like, and looks like my marker is trying to run out of ink. But Olivia knows what to do when it runs out of ink. Just tip it in just a little bit of water. Don't soak it, but just tip it in there just lightly, so it just dampens the point again, and then it'll work for you. All right, so there is one of my figures filled in with some lines. All right, I might fill this one in with some lines as well, so I'm going to kind of come around, and I'm going to put my marker over on its edge so it's making a nice thick line. And I'm going to follow the curvy line that I've already got. All right, so I'm trying my best here to go from one black line to the other side, the other black line. All right, so that's what you want to be mindful of, is that you actually come across. And when I get to that hole, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to start again on the other side, so it looks like it goes around. All right, so now this is some nice thick line. And when I get down here to the bottom of the hole that's on the inside, I can go back to making my lines all the way across. All right. There we go. Now that's a pink, so I think I'd like a nice contrasting color to go with that. So I'm going to look for my nice green, would be pretty. And I'm going to put my green up on its point so that it's making a thin line. I got thick lines, now I'm going to put in some thin lines in a contrasting color. And pink, of course, is in the red family, and of course this is a green family. So that is what color scheme? That's right. It's a complementary color scheme because red and green are across the color wheel from each other. All right, so I'm going to put some nice thin lines in between because I still want to block out a little bit more the white of that space there. All right, and I'm making sure that I'm trying to go down through the middle. If I bump into the red line, I'm not too overly worried about that. If I have a wide spot that needs an additional line, I just come back in and put another one there. Okay. And I'll stop when I get right here. I'll start again right here. Whoop, there's a white space. I'm going to put some more green lines right in there. Okay. I'm going to keep it up on its point, hopefully, so that it stays nice and thin. I like that combination of thick and thin. You might even consider putting in a dotted line, a dashed line if you want to. It's a little bit more work, a little bit more fun because it adds a different dimension to your work. And I like stuff like that. It kind of makes it pretty and different. It makes it different. It's not all just colored in. Okay, so see how I can do that again. I'm just following the little red line and I'm just making little dashes. You can also make polka dotted lines with your marker because you can take your marker and just set it down gently. You don't have to bang it. And you don't have to sit it down for very long before it makes a little colored spot on your paper. So you can fill in any way that you would like to. You can also use lines to fill in spaces and make it look almost like a plaid, you know, fabrics where the bias and the other direction of weaving, the weft and the Oop, I forgot the term. All right, well, when you get white-haired, you can do that. You can fall out of, out of grace with different things. Okay, all right, so I'm going to put it up on its end, and I'm going to make kind of like a plaid. So I'm just putting in some lines that are straight, and they're coming straight across my surface just like that. You see that one kind of bumped into the other one. That's okay. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going from one black line across to the other because that's what helps fill up my space. All right, I could leave it like that if I wanted to, but I want a little more color there. You can come back with a contrasting color on top if you like. However, I'm going to tell you that if you're using a yellow on top of a purple or something of that nature, the point of your marker is going to pick up that ink from the darker color and it will mar your marker, so it won't be a pretty yellow much longer. All right, so I'm just going to use the orange here and I'm going to go right straight across just like this. Okay, so now I've kind of got this plaid going because I have diagonal lines going in one direction and diagonal lines going in the other direction. I could add another layer if I wanted to, or I could add a different color if I wanted to. Like I could come back with, no, I don't have a lot of different colors here. Let's see, what happened to my blue? Okay, well, okay, let's see. How about this one? All right. I could come back and I'm going to go in a different direction than what I did the last time. It was I had lines going this way and then I had lines going that way, so they crisscrossed, and so now I'm going to put lines that are straight up and down, and I'm using a contrasting color. So this is kind of my magenta color. So now you can see how that's going to create more and more of a plaid look. It's kind of cool when you add some different colors. This works great with colored pencils as well, and with your markers. So I'm just doing another set of lines right on top. So you can continue to do that. Now, if you continue to do that and change colors, you may end up with a muddy kind of thing. So you need to kind of plan out and don't do probably more than 3 colors and make sure each color is going in a different direction. Okay, so that's what I want you to do. I want you to continue to fill in your space. Some things you can just color right in. This one's going to be neutral gray color. I'm trying to get my marker over on its side here so it'll mark for me. Whoops, hello, hello. And here we go. All right, so you can see I'm going to just keep on adding and adding. And when I get through, everything on my page is going to have some color. That's very important. Everything on your page is going to have some color. All right, so this one is a gray. It's kind of a neutral color, but that works well sometimes when you want to. And some of my markers are acting like they need to be replenished. You know, we are over halfway through the school year, so I usually buy a brand new set every school year, and it usually starts running out about this time of the year. All right, so I can come back in and add some color here, or I could add another line, like, oh, I could do another spiral if I wanted to in these little spaces right here. Just make sure you're kind of filling it in really good so that it looks like, or I could do a triangle round and round and round. All right, and I'm going to continue to fill in and fill in until I get everything kind of completely, whoop, hello. I'm going to lose my desktop thing here. All right, so here we go. All right, so you can start thinking about how you might want to use, see now that one I just filled in by the scribble method. All right. You might decide that you want to use some colors that are across the color wheel from each other. Like here's a red and a green. Christmas colors are complementary. And why do artists use complementary colors in their work? That's right. It makes other colors brighter. So when you put your red next to a green, that red's going to look much brighter. Okay? Advertisers and people who work in that field of art often know that if they use complementary colors right next to each other, that it's going to make things kind of pop off the page. So people, you know, advertising is so they can convince you need to buy their product. So they like for things to pop off the page and really draw the attention of the consumer, the people who are buying. All right. All right, so I'm going to continue. I don't know what happened. There's my blue. Hello. All right. And you might also notice that a lot of times, I'm going to take and make this one with some lines. Okay. And all right, so you can fill in any way you'd like to. I just like to make sure that I have some, you know, that it's kind of filled. That space is kind of filled because it'll feel like it has color and form to it as long as you kind of get out to those edges and make it look like it's kind of filled. That one works pretty well. All right, so now I've put in some complements, some red and green, some blue and orange. You know, those gator colors. We don't talk about those gators very much, but yeah. Okay, and then I can repeat colors. If I repeat a color, like see where this blue is and that blue is, when you repeat colors like that, you create a rhythm. It's kind of like you're going kaboop, kaboop when you're looking across a page. And so artists know about those things. So see, I have that red circle down there. I'm going to color this triangle that comes off the page here red, so that I have a red kind of in 2 or 3 different places. Here we go. Stripe it out. I'm going to try and act professional here. Mr. Hurst would not be happy with me if he saw me coloring in. That's my old boss from my Atlanta firm where I used to work. There we go. So now I have a red at one end of the page, and at the other end of the page it kind of gives me a sense of rhythm because it helps me move from one area to the other. Now after I finish coloring in all of my shapes, then I'm going to actually color in the background as well. So when you finish, hello, yours might look more like this. Now see, I colored in my background, and part of it Hello, come on. Go in there. Ever notice how things don't want to work for you when you're trying your best to make it work just perfectly? That's my life in a nutshell. All right. All right, so here's one that I've already got colored all the way, and you can see that I've used lines in some places. I've used, that technique of plaiding here and there. I've used the same color red. Now look at the difference between the same color red. Here I just made really thick lines, but kind of close together. So now we have what looks almost like a white line appearing in our space. That's kind of cool. All right, and I've kind of bounced those colors, so it's kind of like you kind of look across the page, kaboom, 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 kaboom. All right, so I used them in more than one place, and then of course I came back in and filled in any of my white background space. You can use one solid color if you'd like to. Or you can use lines if you want to. I tried to think about, using contrast there, and I had not used yellow in any of my shapes, so that works really well for that. Okay, so take a few minutes and finish coloring up your project. All right, and do your work nice and neatly as if you were doing it for your art director boss so it looks nice and neat. Okay, so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to consider a contrasting color for our background because we're going to actually glue this down to another sheet of paper. All right, so I could use, hello, thank you. Don't fall off the table. All right, I could use a neutral color if I wanted to, like a black. And you can kind of see how that sets off your colors. Makes it look really bright and pretty. Okay, so maybe you'd want to do that. Or you can think about a color that you might want to use. Maybe you want to use a red. So this is just standard construction paper. You know me, at my house I've always got some art supplies around. You may not have construction paper at your house, but you might have a piece of wrapping paper that's a solid color, or a piece of bulletin board paper, or even butcher paper or something of that nature. All right, and so we're thinking about contrast here. All right, so there's my colors on red. Let's see what it looks like on green. Oh, I really like that. I think that's a really good combination here. I think it's because there are so many warm colors in my design itself that the green really kind of sets it off. So you decide which way you want to do it. That's fine. Okay. So we need that, and then I'm going to take my design and I'm folding it directly in half. All right, now this is the tricky part. You might need some help, especially you younger children, especially if you need a little help, ask mom or dad or somebody else around, older sister or somebody else around the house to kind of help you. But what I did is I took my design that we were using, and I just folded it right in half. Right, so there's my crease. All right, and then I took my ruler and I put it down on top of my page, and I just looked at one side there. I need a little ribbon where I do not cut. So this is my do not cut reminder line. So you can take your marker if you want to, or you could take a colored pencil, is what I used, a colored pencil, and you can draw yourself a line there to kind of remind yourself that I am not going to cut there. Because remember, I said we were going to do a work that shows some movement. All right, so then when you finish drawing your line, you may want to come back with your marker and actually stripe that in. So you can see this, when I get to that line, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to cut beyond that line. Okay? All right, and then I took my ruler and I turned my page this way, and I just set it there, and I eyeballed about a half an inch. So it's not true to measurement necessarily, but that doesn't bother me. So I'm hoping that's not going to bother you either. If you're a perfectionist and you feel you have to measure it, then go ahead and measure. But I just bring it down and I look to see, is that about a half an inch? And I draw a line. I look to see, is my ruler about straight with the last line? If it's kind of crooked like this, and I know, oh, I got to straighten up my ruler. And then I draw a line and I bring it down and I draw another line. So I'm just doing it by eyeballing it, so to speak. Okay. All right. And these lines I really kind of got in there a little too close together, a little thinner than I probably needed to. But because it's going to make it a little harder when I cut and mount it. Because it is so thin. So be concerned about that. Be leery of that. Okay, over on the other side, it's easier to see when you open it out. I'm going to put my ruler along the opposite side. So if this one is down low, this one's going to be up high. If this one were up high, then this one's going to be down low, okay? So wherever that last line is that you put in there, all right, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to actually put our ruler there, and it's helpful if you're using that marker, go ahead and just use that marker to put your line in. I just made it a nice wavy line. All right, because my easel doesn't want to stay up on the table. Thank you. All right, here we go. All right, so so that's the way it goes, and then I'm going to fold it back over and come back with my ruler and my colored pencil and make some lines. See, those are really narrow, so it doesn't need to be quite that narrow. You can just make it about a half an inch or about the width of your pinky fingers works, or even a little bit better is your index finger because it makes it a little bit wider. Okay, so we want lines there. Okay. All right, so this is the back side of my composition. All right, so it's not messing up the front side of my composition at all. All right, and so then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm actually going to cut. Now remember I said where that red line is, that's where I want to stop. All right, so I'm going to pull this down a little bit so I can see you a little better maybe. Yeah, my house is just way full of all kinds of things. All right. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to take my paper, right, and I'm going to cut those lines. And when I get to this red line, I'm going to stop. I'm not cutting all the way off. Now, if you forget and you happen to cut all the way through because you're not paying attention or your scissors slip or whatever might happen, that's okay because that's what they make Scotch tape for. All right, so I'm just going to take and I'm going to start right here on this first line and I'm going to cut all the way up to that red line and stop. All the way up to this red line and stop. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm going to go all the way up. I'm trying to keep my scissors right on my line and go all the way to the big red line. It's kind of like the big red dog, isn't it? All right, so I'm cutting into my design, and of course my design that's on the back side is actually being cut apart, and I'm being very careful not to cut through my red line right here at the very top, right? That very, and look how it's beginning to get kind of fluffy here, like pom-pom or something here. All right, so I'm going to keep on cutting and cutting. All right, now that one right in the middle, that's the one you got to watch out for, because when you get to that one, it's going to be tempting to cut all the way across and cut them apart. And you don't want to cut it apart. You only want to cut it to its red line. Okay, so I'm going to cut this one, didn't quite, there we go. And I'm going to turn it over on the other side so you can see my design is getting really frilly there. See, that's kind of cool, right? All right, so now I'm going to keep it on the back side so I can see my red line. I'm going to take and cut each of these lines as well, and it's going to be in reverse. So these lines are cut over on that side. These lines will be cut on this side, and that's going to allow the paper to actually make kind of like an S-curve. Remember we were talking about having some rhythm or movement in our page? Can you think of an artist who does a lot of movement in their work? If you guess Jacob Lawrence, that would be a good guess. Romare Bearden often has a lot of movement in his work. Various artists do that. They create all kinds of movement by using lines that don't just stand still. If we had mounted our work on the paper, where it was just in one straight line the way we drew it and colored it, then we would end up with something that was very static, very still, doesn't move at all. So see, you have to be careful of this one right here in the middle, because that's where it turns direction, and that's where it's easiest to tear or cut by mistake. So that's the one you want to make sure you leave intact. If you forget and you mess up and cut all the way through it, just use a little piece of Scotch tape on the back. Who's gonna know but you? Nobody will know. We won't even tell Grandmama, right? Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to take that contrasting piece of paper that I have and turn my board back around where you can kind of see my paper here. There we go. Alright, and down too low. Alright. Pull this up just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. Alright, so there. Alright, so now I'm going to take my piece of contrasting paper and I'm just going to put it in my clipboard so it'll stay put for me, hopefully. Alright, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a glue stick, and we're going to think about how we can put this strip down and actually get it to do some curving. Hello. Come on. It flipped on me. That's okay. Be really cautious now, because when it's cut apart, it's really easy to break it apart. It's hard for me to work up in the air like this. Okay, so I'm going to let this come down like this, and so you can see how it's gonna, when we start gluing it up, it can literally turn directions. It's going to turn directions, and we may need a larger piece of paper here. Okay, so it will actually turn directions for us on the page when we get it kind of glued down, and I'm going to have to set it back down in my lap where I can do that a little bit more so, and that's going to be hard for you to see, I'm afraid. Alright, so I'm going to use a glue stick and I just want to make it wiggle a little bit so that it makes it look like there's a little bit of movement here. Alright, so what I'm doing, if I can get it where you can kind of see it, is I'm kind of spreading those parts apart. So now when I do that, as I do that, it puckers up a little bit, so you just have to glue a little bit more right there. And I'm not using white glue. If you're using white glue, you got to remember that you're only doing a snail's trail. The perfect idea is to make sure that your lines are pretty much evenly spaced apart, so that you see that spacing in between like that, and that's what makes it look really cool, because then the design that we've already drawn in gets spread out a little bit, and the design that is left here kind of moves, and it starts making that, instead of making a straight vertical or horizontal line, it's going to actually kind of make a little S shape for us. Okay, so I'm going to take a minute and do some gluing and try to get that on the page for you and me both. I think I'll take it off my clipboard since I'm now working straight on the dining room table. Oh, and by the way, when you're doing your coloring in and so forth, if you're working on your mom's nice dining room table, make sure you put a pad of newspaper or something, a sales brochure or something on the table, so in case your markers bleed through, you're not getting it on the table. I don't want to be in trouble with your mothers. Okay, so I'm going to put, just think I'm going to start with the first 2 or 3. I'm just going to put a stripe of glue all the way down. I'm being careful not to tear that apart, so I guess I did about 5 or 6 really. And I'm going to start at the top of the page, and I'm going to spread those out just a little bit because I spread them out too much. There we go, there we go. And so there's just enough glue here to kind of stick them down. Doesn't need to be very wide apart. There we go. And I kind of want the spaces to be even myself. That's what I kind of like. Alright, so I got these first 4 or 5 kind of glued up. The wider you put it apart, the more it's going to kind of curve for you. Okay, so now I've got those 2 or 3 glued down. I'm going to put some more glue on these strips. Oh, be careful. They're going to break and fall off. Alright, so here we go. Putting some glue on this side. Alright, I'm going to continue to kind of spread them out just a little bit. Whoop, whoop, come on. You got to catch them while they're still kind of, sort of wet. And I'm going to pull this back around a little bit more. There we go. There we go. Kind of a unique way of doing a project. Now on the other side here, it's kind of bunching up a little bit, so I'm just letting it bunch a little. I may have to come back with a little bit more glue stick there to kind of get it to stay. But that's okay. So see right along here where it doesn't act like it wants to stick. A little more glue stick right there. Stick her on down. And you'll notice right here at the top that the page is kind of off the page itself, the bigger page. That's okay. That's all right. It's not going to hurt anything. All right, so now I'm going to turn and make this one fan out the other direction. All right, so I'm hoping you're seeing this pretty well. All right, so I have to work from where I've just glued. All right, so that means I got to come over and do this one. So this may take a practice or 2. You may have to do more than one of these designs to kind of feel your way through it, or you may even want to take a piece of paper and try cutting it out and just gluing it down on a piece of contrasting paper so you can kind of see what you're doing and try it before you get too carried away. Now my fingers are getting sticky, so now I'm going to try and I don't want my spacing to not be too much different. Okay, so this is going to turn and kind of go this direction. All right, so we probably should have started over in that corner. This is the first one I've really tried to glue down. So, oops, hello. This is glue to glue. Here we go. All right. So I can see that I got way more paper than I got paper to put it on, so you can make that decision as to whether you want to take off some of this so that it ends up on your page. So I think I will do that because that looks like that's going to be way too much. So that was a simple solution for that, wasn't it? Okay. Flip it over, finish adding some glue to all these stripes right here. There we go. And I'm going to continue to glue, hopefully. Here we go, here we go, here we go. So now my line is kind of moving back in the other direction. So I have created a sense of movement, and I probably should have moved it over and started a little bit further over. I'm going to have to come back in and add a little bit more glue along these outer edges where it didn't get cut, so that it does stay put. There we go. And that one, and the other one. All right, so now, hello, there we go. So now you can see that when we start dividing it out and gluing it down, right, it's creating a movement because that line there does not make a static vertical or horizontal line. It kind of moves with us. So here we go. See the project. See how it makes a line that kind of moves, and it breaks up your own drawing design, which is kind of cool as well. It puts it on a contrasting paper. You may need to play with it a little bit and start, unlike me, start over in this corner so that it'll have more room to go. Go maybe from corner to corner would be better. If you go to corner, it might spread it out a little bit more and work for you. All right, so that's my design for today, actually showing some movement. Thank you for coming to art school. Here I am. Hello. I hope all of you are doing well. And here we are. This is Art School. We are on the WayneCountyArtist.com or WCAC TV 16. And before I go, here is a hug for you. See my hug up there? That was a piece of artwork that my two daughters made for me and sent in a Easter card because we, for the first time in our lives, weren't together for Easter this year. I hope you are well and you are safe, and that we meet again on TV 16. Thank you for coming to art school today. I hope your project turns out well and you enjoy it.